Okay, we are live.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Go ahead and call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order for Wednesday, August 9th. I don't think we have any. Do we have any public comment today, Keith?
There is no public comment received.
Okay. So we need to approve the consent agenda for the August 19th and the minutes for July 12th. I move to approve those items. Would anyone second that?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Approved. Moving into our agenda items for today. So we have some updates. First one is from Keith on vacancies. Vacancy.
Yes, there's one vacancy still open. We haven't received any additional applications from the city manager's office for anyone interested in the position, and so it remains open.
Okay.
I did talk to one landscape designer that I know, and she might be. Is there also an at-large position, or is that already filled too for somebody who doesn't fit that particular description?
Currently, there's no at-large position.
Well, if everyone can I guess keep thinking about who in your worlds might be a good fit for that.
I'm sorry. Actually, Eduardo Diaz Salazar is our at-large member.
Okay.
The next item is mine. Update on communication with Deacon Development. I did reach out to them. They wrote back politely that they're still enthusiastic, that they're in the infancy of their process, that they would like suggestions. Sort of communication lines are open. I don't, at this point, I guess the next step might be to provide them with some information about how the mural process works, so that I think they already have this information, but try to, continue to encourage them. They seem excited. They have these giant blank walls, as we know. This is part of that new redevelopment of the former Nordstrom site downtown. So they have a drive-in kind of courtyard with these two big walls. So they're enthusiastic, but they're not ready yet. So we'll just kind of keep checking in with them. We have I saw some email traffic about this. Eduardo's not here today or yet, but Keith, did he transmit some information to you for that hard copy application? I saw. Yes. Maybe he dropped that off to you.
Yes. Eduardo asked where he should drop it off, and I told him City Hall. He will be meeting with the property owner to complete the application, and he anticipates it'll be complete by the end of this week. So with that submission and payment for the fee, I will start the process of reviewing the application.
And remind us, is this the mural that's sort of half completed in the alleyway?
Correct. This is the mural on 1380 Madison Street Northeast. It abuts an alleyway, and I received information from our public works traffic engineer that it is accessible for the public. But the maintenance of it is the maintenance of the alley is part of the city's sections of alleys that they maintain.
Okay.
Yes, that's great, because last time it was a little iffy whether they were going to do the process or not. So that's really good news.
Yep.
Kudos, Eduardo, for shepherding that person through the process.
Yes,
absolutely.
I know I received an envelope from Keith full of brochures and other items. I don't know if other people did as well.
I had already picked up mine, but you sent me more. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you can put that at the Heritage, Willamette Heritage Center. I dropped off A bunch of the large and small brochures with the QR codes stuck onto them at the Willamette Heritage Center, Salem Public Library, and also, where was the other one I went to?
Salem.
Oh, you froze.
Sorry, you're kind of freezing up, Susan.
Travel Salem, yes, it was Travel Salem.
Salem.
Yeah,
Got
the next
better.
place is going to be at Center 50 Plus, but I actually ran out of
Mm.
stickers, so no more QR codes. I'm gonna have to reorder.
I have plenty of extras if you need
Oh,
them.
okay, maybe I'll take you
Because
up
I
on
have big stack from before, so,
that.
all
Okay,
right, we'll talk.
okay, yeah, so they've been distributed.
Great. Do you still have a lot left, or did you make a big dent in your supply?
I probably have about 300 of the small brochures left, or the ones for the map of the hunt, but the larger brochures are all out.
So maybe we should talk about at some point, updating that brochure.
Yeah.
With the new, once the Public Works building, I guess, and doesn't have Public Works, it doesn't have a police department piece. And some other things, so.
I agree.
Okay, great. Moving to subcommittee reports. I have not reached out to Barbara to work on the value statement. All I can say in my own defense is that I'm just slammed. I'm busy, but
Zach,
I
I
intend.
came across a paper I wrote
Oh, great.
that dealt with that. Should I just send that to you?
That'd be great.
Okay, I'll
Maybe
do
you could jumpstart my.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Will do.
Can I ask what that means by value statement? Is that not a strategy, or is that just a kind of a overall idea kind of thing?
I think it got parking lotted after our meeting with the art folks from Eugene, that we were going to kind of try to continue that work, and we just haven't picked it up. So.
Because I saw value statement, I wasn't sure what that meant.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it means either, but
Okay,
I
it's
think
not just me.
no, I think it means the work we were starting to do of, articulating the values of public art to the city of Salem through the lens of the other public art plans we've looked at, kind of trying to coalesce into this is what we think public art would do for the city as a jumping off point for, pushing the city towards a public art plan, which I still have enthusiasm for. But
Yeah, so it wouldn't be exactly saying, we think you should have a public art plan and this is what we think it should look like. It's more about trying to convince them that it would be valuable. I don't know if they need convincing. I think they might need directing toward making it happen. Maybe I'm just impatient, but that's just, rather than kind of an academic statement of why the arts are important for somewhere like Salem. I mean, that's part of it, but I don't know that they need convincing of that. But they might.
well, right. I think the steps were in our minds were to begin to have coordination and intentionality around public art ultimately requires permanence of staff and dedication of staff, which is to say FTEs, which is what you see in cities like Olympia and Eugene, right? So they have
Right.
coordinated public arts program where they're looking for certain kinds of artist solicitations, and they're doing things by zones and impact area, and they have a whole program that's beyond the scope of what we as volunteers can do. And so to bridge the gap from here to, hiring one FTE or two part-time staff to be dedicated to public art is how do we get there? And so I think the thinking was, so I don't know, I don't have that answer. I'm happy to, follow that advice and not try to develop a value statement, but I'm not sure what the best framework is to have that conversation.
Susan, can I ask why you think that the city council doesn't need convincing? Is there things that someone on the council has said from meetings you've attended, or things that have been written, in the Salem Reporter or the Statesman Journal, or?
I get the feeling just by their support of programs like the street art program, and also, what they're trying to do with the Bloomberg grant. I think the mayor has attended a Bloomberg session. I think Keith, you were there with it. I think it's important to remind them, but I don't know if it's, I feel it's more important to say, how do we get this done? And what can we do to help? And what can we do to encourage and facilitate and, advise? Are there grants that you would need to get to hire somebody, or, just to kind of make it happen? I don't know, maybe I'm assuming that they understand that the creative economy is something that's really good for Salem, and that, they know more about it, but I just don't know if we need to educate them, in depth about that. There are articles, there are websites. I mean, we can give them links to myriad studies that have been done without us having to redo that again. To me, I feel like there should be some action.
Maybe the approach to potentially take, instead of thinking of values where you're trying to indicate that something has value, that take the two items you suggested, Susan, and say it's already a demonstrated value. So it's already been proven that it is value because it is da 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 da. And then from that, we can suggest a strategy. I don't know if is that going along more with what you were thinking?
Yes.
I think you guys might be the subcommittee, and I should.
You're good at the big picture, though, Zach. You're really good at that, and I'm kind of more like, how can we get this done? What's the step that we need? Who do we talk to? What kind of timeline can we set? How can we help? How can we make this happen? So maybe the three of us could.
Well, how did the I felt the Bloomberg thing happen from the city staff.
It did.
And so maybe it's trying to understand better how the city staff initiates things, and then what is the two parts. What is the sort of overall philosophy of the new city manager, and then of the person who's under him, who oversees the area of arts, public art in general. And I think if we knew those, I think we could actually write something that speaks to who they are based on the material that's been written in the past. I'm still happy to work on it, although I have some life changes, things that are going to take up a lot of my time in the next 3 or 4 months, but I'm still happy to do it.
Well, I think it's an interesting, it's a moment of transition. As you're probably aware, city of Portland is not renewing the contract with RAC. So,
oh, really?
So the city is going to be doing something, right? They're going to be hiring, they're going to be bringing all of that functionality in-house, which I think the last annual contract was something like $19 million. So just as obviously Portland's bigger than Salem, but they are building a public art staff program to the tune of $20 million. So that the answer is there's got to be a commitment for funding, and that seems to be where we run into the so I don't disagree with you necessarily, Susan. Sure, everyone might think it's a good idea, but I don't know how we get from that to interest and commitment to create a department, a funded group of people who are going to pay attention to it.
Do we need to just wait until this election over a tax of salary gets through.
Which I'm sure will get voted down probably. I mean, it's beyond my, but
I
it took,
don't, yeah.
took about,
sorry.
20 it took about 20 seconds to get 10,000 signatures on the ballot measure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just, if that they wouldn't have brought forward that tax if they didn't feel that they needed it to fund
Right.
the
So,
fire department and the police department. So
Right,
those
so-
things always come first.
so we're operating in a moment where there's a scarcity of resources. And so how does public art fit into that conversation? But I think you're right that maybe the answer is, rather than us trying to pitch up, we should have a meeting ask for a meeting with whoever, the new city manager in charge of deputy city manager and whatever staff are sort of tangentially associated with public art, and say, what legwork can we do? What's your vision for public art?
Because they have one of some kind, or they wouldn't have gone forward with Bloomberg.
So what's your, what do you want to, if you had the funding or some of the funding, how would you start to build this program? What would you want to see it do? Is there something we as SPAC can do to help with that legwork? Keith, is that a meeting that you think, is it Scott? I've now forgotten.
Correct. Yes. To answer Barbara's question of who supported it, it was directly from the mayor, Hoy, who sent an email to the city manager saying, hey, there's this opportunity. The new city manager kept that, I guess, in the back burner and emailed it to Scott Archer when he became the deputy city manager, which was, I think, a week before that, or 2 weeks before the application was due. With my experience on the commission, I said I could help, and then I was assigned it. So we put that together, and we have that application in. So what I recognize is that there is a desire, but there's no resources. I dedicate about 5 hours every week to SPAC specifically, and that's for our $1.6 million collection. So the resources into managing collections is not really there. I can show you what I've done with regards to maintenance with the resources I do have at my disposal. But like you said, it's a larger conversation we're going to have. I do invite Scott Archer to these meetings. I started with this one. He couldn't make it. He did signify it as tentative. So I think if we want to add him to the agenda, we could possibly do that.
I wonder if we put together, a couple paragraphs, maybe an elevator talk, whatever, which I guess is smaller than that, but just, what we'd like to see, that we'd like to see a Salem public art plan. We've met with, from Eugene, whatever, with some links in it as an email saying, this is what we recommend that Salem consider doing. Not mention the budget, not mention anything, just say, this is this as a commission, we recommend this. I mean, I don't want to skip ahead, but thinking about this whole mural program, it's procedurally how do we go about recommending things like this? Do we go to city council? Do we go to the city manager? Do we go right to the mayor? Do we wait till they do it? I mean, it's procedurally, how do we as a commission recommend these things? To try to get some ball rolling. I understand the whole budget thing. There are possibly grants out there for things like this. That could be explored, an extra hour a week or something. City staff somebody might be able to look into it. We could help look into it. See if there's some kind of way, but what do we do? And I think it was in the minutes from last meeting for us to find out what's the procedure for us to recommend things to city.
I think when we spoke with legal, they recommended that there's multiple options that individuals within the commission can reach out to their to the city councilors individually or as a group, either writing them in a letter or addressing them at the council meeting. And so there are options. It's how the group wants to, if they want to do it collectively or individually.
I would think we are a commission, so
Mhm.
we're a group. I don't know how anyone else feels about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have the goal, the same goals in mind. So it would come from all of us, I think.
Does someone want to take lead on drafting that letter?
I mean, I can do that. You know, I think I've written out a lot of this stuff before and other things when we were doing the, we were gonna do the survey. I think some of us put our thoughts down about the whole changes we'd like to see. Maybe that was a while back, but I could try to put my thoughts together, or maybe a couple of us could do it, but I will try to do that. But also, I think, you know, when it comes to the mural program, that's something we want to do as well. So maybe get through the rest of the meeting, or I don't know if we want to skip to that or.
Okay, so yeah, let's circle back on this, but
Okay.
let's change this. We're not going to do this value statement. We're going to continue in this meeting and maybe in subsequent meetings. We're going to continue to talk about engaging with city staff to recommend a public art plan and solicit ideas from them about how we can help one way or another.
Okay.
I think without city commitment, there's not, you know, that's sort of the first step. The city has to say, well, yes, we want to do this and here's the outline for it. And we could really, you know, use you guys to do this, that, or whatever. If the city's not going to be behind it right now, then, you know.
I almost wonder if we go right to city council, because that's where the street art program came from. It came from city council. One of the counselors, you know, a letter was sent. One of the counselors proposed it. It was voted on, and then it was sent to city staff. I don't think city staff does things on their own without being instructed by council or the manager. I don't know, Keith, I'm not sure. Is that the process? I mean, that's what I'm getting, that the process is city council kind of instructs staff if they agree to move forward on something.
Well, it depends on what the topic is and the scope of it. If it's just discussing an existing program or elements of, you know, like an administrative rule, I think that's something that we can talk about with staff that's in-house. Where it goes to council probably would be where you look at things that actually shape code, where a council resolution would be required. But I think the backup of reviewing materials and talking with staff would be the most appropriate course instead of going directly to council.
Thank you.
That's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
But when you have
Council side.
when you have large items like council resolution, even that would go to staff first, because legal helps the counselor with the amendment to the code. So staff is always involved.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so Keith, you've got some updates on, I didn't see your email about going out last weekend to do some, or 2 weekends ago to do some scrubbing on something.
Yeah,
I was
I'm excited.
oh, I didn't get to run out there and help you. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a last minute one. My water crew was like, "Hey Keith, we have an hour. Let's do it." And I was like, "Let's do it." So the repair of the Drummond Rooster, I didn't get an update from Lee Immonen yet. I will recheck this month with him. I know he went on vacation or was out of state. The Good Sense cleaning, it went well. Let me share my screen. So if you are can you see it?
Mm,
Okay. So this is the dirty version. You see that it's concrete or aluminum, I believe. Yes. And it just has lots of growth on it. So I got our water team together. Our water truck. Oh, and this is the bolt that we were talking about. The sign is placed right in the negative space of the statue, so it does block it. But the maintenance that the water crew did, this is Kyle Lawrence. They usually do a green stormwater infrastructure like bioswales and things like that. But they took the water truck, they pressure washed the concrete on the side of it, and we scrubbed with soft bristle brushes, and they used a water hose to just wash it off. And it looks nice and shiny now. And so now the issue is whether or not we want to move this. I inquired with our facility staff, and they quoted us $200 to be able to move it, which I don't think is too bad. It's just now SPAC has to determine where they want to put it. I'm thinking right to the side of it, but yeah, that's where we are for that one. Any questions?
Thanks for doing that, Keith.
Yeah,
Yeah. It said to do it every 6 months. So I'll just take a look at it, but it's pretty easy. It took less than an hour for our crews to do it. So yeah.
Cool.
And the next one is the black discs.
Mhm.
These are what they look like, nice and clean. The artist is Bill Roy. And I found in the inventory forms that it was received as a gift in about 1972 from from Le Points. I think that was a restaurant. Britta Lyon, France, and Martin, France. Britta is about 94 years old now. And the person who sent me the email regarding the discs said that Britta used to go and clean it herself because it was a gift from her. And so she wanted to know if, what's the next process. I looked at the history of it, and there was a letter from 1985 to the mayor so we have a history of the gifter taking care of the piece, but we now know that it is part of the city's collection. It's our responsibility to do it. So the question is, how do we want I took this today.
Mm.
How do we want to approach this? And it was painted and it was steel because they wanted the public to interact with it, which was interesting. But you can see that the paint has been scratched off, rubbed off, and there's lots of biological stuff on there. I went to our warehouse and purchased wire brushes for the concrete part, and bristle brushes for between. But before I get started on it, I wanted to see what the approach was that SPAC wanted to do. I did not see any maintenance plans or documents within our files on how to do this. And the emailer said that she's not comfortable talking to Britta because of her age, and that the city should just take responsibility since it's our collection now. So yeah.
Do we want to consider repainting it?
I think we should consult a conservator before we do that.
Okay.
So, because there are ways that this should be treated and handled, and the surface, and not just with, wire brushes and things like that. It's,
Okay.
there are certain kind of paint, it's outdoors.
Are you okay with me cleaning off the bottom stuff, or just wait until the conservators have a chance to review?
I would say wait for
Okay.
the whole thing. I don't know. I mean, Yeah.
So we have two conservators of contractors of record that can do this type of work. We reviewed them. It's ARG, I believe. And another one. Sorry. And what I can do is contact them. Let's see who it is. Architectural Resources Group, ARG, and Art Solutions Lab. So if it's a wish, I can contact them and have them provide a quote for that kind of work.
And they do the conservation as well. They're not just consulting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I would say.
All right.
Yeah.
I think I need a action from the commission to move forward with this kind of work.
So I would move that those two conservation and how are those two, just a question, how are they selected?
There was I think a request for proposals in the beginning of it. It's a 5-year renewable contract. And so they have requests for proposals to be a contract of record, and I guess those two were applied and got selected for it. You can have multiple contractors of record.
So I propose that those two contractors be contacted for estimates on restoring that black discs piece.
Second that. All in favor?
Okay.
Let us know what happens, Keith.
Will do.
Thanks for looking into that.
Mhm.
Social media plan.
Yes. So I have finished a proposal for a social media plan for the next year. I had to tailor it slightly after I was doing more research, because what I initially had wanted to implement just wasn't going to be possible with the selection of artists that we have in the collection. It's not as diverse as I was hoping, which is just the fact of the matter, which was good research just in and itself. So I have tailored it slightly, but I have come up with 12 different months and 12 different themes.
Wow.
And then proposing that each month under that theme, we have a weekly post as well with a selected artwork. So it's a lot of work that would be part of it that would really expose people. Some of it is currently, on our website within those tours and within our scavenger hunts, but some of the works are not included in those either. So I think it would expose people to some new works, some new artists, some new mediums, perhaps. So yeah, I don't, Keith, is this something that I would just send to all of you to take a look at? Is this something I should send to you first? Kind of what is the best approach here?
I don't want to filter any creative ideas. So absolutely, I think if you send it to me, I will send that to the group.
Okay.
So we don't get any communication mishaps. But that's amazing. You have a 12-month plan. That is awesome. Yeah. So the next step, Krista, I would get feedback from the rest of the group.
Sure.
And then you can provide me like a final version, and then we'll run through our communications team. Most likely get a quick Zoom call or Teams meeting just to get you in connection with them, because they're great people. And yeah, it'll be a great connection.
Fantastic. Well, I will do that.
Thank you.
That's great.
That's awesome. Keith, looks like you've got a report on PGE and the Gilbert House Children's Museum.
Short report. I sent an email and a follow-up phone call to Alicia Day, the executive director of the Gilbert House Children's Museum. She wrote a letter in support of the Bloomberg grant as well, but I haven't heard back from her. But I anticipate it would be positive from what it sounded like in her initial email.
Can you refresh us on what that's about? That's not about the Bloomberg project?
It is. Here, let me and the reason why I called and followed up is because Eduardo at our last meeting Water Street, Union Street. We talked about the Portland Street Art Alliance. And he brought up the fact that when he mentioned that Salem was doing this project and had potentially access to the walls of the PGE substation, it got me excited too, and so I reached out to them. So if these walls, and we have to read the definition because is this a building according to code? It's not storing anything, it's not a silo, but it is walls. So there must have been some kind of agreement with them to put it up here. Oh, look, there's an activity. Oh,
And so you were reaching out to kind of understand the context of how
correct.
the open house got that permission or whatever.
Yes, how permission was granted. Even the city, because I don't think these were permitted, to that extent. But Eduardo was interested in having this, and so I just wanted to move forward with it, either for, both for the grant point of view, and if not the grant, for something else.
Was that included? I seem to remember that was included in the proposal for the grant, or was it not?
It was included as an option for private-public partnership.
Right.
But the specific grant was for the project was for the asphalt and the
Oh, I see.
pavement,
I see.
the sidewalk pavers. Yep.
Okay.
So I guess just to reiterate, there's two possible avenues there. One, it could become part of the Bloomberg grant, or two, if we understand the mechanism for how the Gilbert House got access to those walls, perhaps that could become another canvas space for us to have in our arsenal, I guess, of potential spots to suggest murals to people, or I don't know. This segues into our next conversation.
Exactly.
If we had such a potential canvas, how would we activate it? I don't know that PGE is going to necessarily pay to have a mural put on it. So what would that look like, right? Is that a possibility to have spaces that we identify as kind of available for murals? And then people could apply to, I'm just making this up now, but but that might be, so I'll stop talking. This does lead into new business, which is exploring alternatives to Salem's current mural program.
But Zach, before you get started, can I just make a statement about the mural program and the city's role in it?
Yeah.
As well as SPAC. I just want to remind, and this is what I learned recently while talking with Heather. I'm new to this position about a year and a half. And prior to that, Heather dealt with a lot of the mural program and coding. And so what I learned was that the city really it really explored different mural programs like Portland, and they landed on the current mural program because it felt at that point in time it reduced the risk to the city legally in terms of some of the lawsuits, I believe, that Portland experienced, and I think that lawsuit was referred to in the article that Susan provided to us. But I just want to reiterate that SPAC is an extension of the city, and that the city did decide on the mural program as it's currently written. Now, if we want to make changes to the program as it is, that's something we can totally explore. But if we're looking to revamp the entire process, I think we got to start bringing more people into it. That's just to say I want to put some bumpers on the conversation today, and just recognize that there was work that was put into the mural program as it is today. Okay, that's all. Now we can discuss.
Understood. I just don't know whether Portland had their original mural program, what they call their original mural program, which is separate from their kind of city collection program. I don't know if they had that at the time when Salem was looking at their mural program to pattern theirs after. Because they seem to be two different animals in a way, whereas their original or unique, they call it unique mural program, is more like the street painting program. And my kind of, especially with, I don't, you haven't talked about this recent mural issue that you sent around with the email that just came through, Keith, about controversy. Is it a sign? Is it a mural? Who decides what? And I think we've discussed in the past that the mural program, where it becomes part of the city collection, is cumbersome and not practical for a lot of people who want to do murals in the city. And then if we want to encourage Salem to be a mural city, which I would love to see. I mean, I just finished a novel about Chicago, and how the murals just made people, just improve people's lives, and they got so much from the murals. And we do have some murals, but I think the kind of murals that personally I would like to see in the city are more kind of uplifting murals that communities could look to. And there's no real outlet for that. I mean, we're seeing that sort of happening on the that mural that we're getting the application for hopefully next time. But the person who wanted to do that mural, the building owner, went ahead on his own and did it, and was reluctant to go through this whole process with the 7 years and the easement. And we've gone over this ad nauseum. And there are other programs that could exist in tandem that I think that the lawyers could look at, because they're happening in other cities. They're working it. It's, as far as I can understand, that other program is working in Portland. There's some amazing murals there. There's the Milwaukee program that I gave and I'm sure I didn't even go and look across the country to see if there are more, but there are mural programs that work that are not, that don't impose the kind of restrictions and, having to jump through hoops that Salem currently has. And if we all agree, which I think we've all, from what I understand, have voiced similar concerns, my question is, what's the next step? What do we do? How do we go to the city and say, listen, we feel like this isn't working for everybody in the city, and we'd like to propose that city staff take a look at these other programs and see if it's work with the lawyers, see if it's workable, that we have another type of a program. I just want to say again that when we did the street painting program, when we proposed that, when Virginia Stapleton went to the city council and proposed it and started to go through, there was a proposal for city code to be changed to have a community art section, saying that it recognizes desire by the community to install public works of art produced by artists and non-artists that are not eligible for public art designation. I mean, that's a whole other thing, but they were starting to look at this whole thing of community art and other types of public art that wouldn't just be in the public art collection. So I'm wondering, how do we kind of foster looking at that more, as a group? Again, maybe do we draft a letter and send it to whomever? I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's just, I'm getting impatient that we need to just take the next step. What do we do?
Well, Sue, thank you, Susan. I appreciate your comments. And I did read the article that you provided, and I did look at the Public Arts Murals program from Portland. And to me, when reading through the community, what is that bucket they call it? The original art mural permit, which is just $50, and there's no public review of it. From the city's point of view, there is what I read through is the applicant will have to go to the neighborhood association themselves and do this entire process that I think is more cumbersome than what the city is doing. But the thing with the original art mural permit is that there's no city review process. It's more neighborhood policing itself, is how I read it. I understand your want or sense of urgency to do something, but what are the specific elements of the current policy or programs that are challenging to the applicants? I think looking at that might be a good first step. Then, because this is a new program. The street painting program was just finalized in 2022. And so there are going to be growing pains. It's just that I want to be able to identify the specific issues with it. So for instance, if it was the 12-page application process that, wasn't easily accessible to an applicant, maybe we look specifically at that and not to the entire program itself. So that's kind of the take I have as the liaison and staff person, but I do want to hear from other people as well.
Yeah, I guess following up on that, so I think that the permanent collection thing is just a mechanism to give SPAC oversight, to give somebody oversight. And in this case, the city wanted that to be SPAC, and so they created this sort of conceit. But it isn't really, that part isn't really an obstacle to anybody. It's a little awkward in the way we think about it, but I don't know that it actually has any real impact on applicants getting murals done. The 7-year commitment seems like, I don't know what the background of that is, but obviously somebody wanted to say, if you're going to do this, then you have to make some sort of commitment to keep it in place for a while and maintain it. So we could talk about whether that's too long or whatever. I guess so there's sort of, seems like there's three different strains going on. One is businesses who have the desire to put murals on their buildings, whether leased or owned, right? But they have legal responsibility for a building, and they want to put a mural on it in order to enhance that building for whatever reason, whether that's a mixed-use residential building downtown or auto shop or whatever the thing is, right? They want a roofing company. We've seen a bunch of examples now. So there's that process. Then we're beginning to talk about individuals who want to put a mural on an individual, a non-public or sort of a non-business format, I guess, right? So some other kind of public space, either their own residential property, or I guess as we just started talking about, are there sites where the city could sort of pre-identify blank canvases and put those canvases into rotation to allow artists to apply for time, essentially? Would the city then want the artist to pay the freight of doing the work, or would there be any, this is where it intersects with the earlier conversation a little bit in my mind, is there's a money element to all this, right? So the neighborhood association and street painting can kind of come together, and the individual residents can pitch in with some money, and there's some in-kind donations for the paint. And if it's individuals, I think some group of those individuals are going to want to do it themselves, right? Like, I want to put a mural on my garage. Okay, how does that might be a neighborhood association thing, where the neighborhood association needs to be okay with that kind of use. Like, I don't know, do people want to see everyone's personal creative expressions on residential structures around the neighborhood? I don't know. So there's a series of conversations probably around that. Then there's this kind of public space thing we're talking about of canvases. That seems like maybe that we might want to talk about some sort of small grant through SPAC, maybe to help offset the costs for local artists who had to apply, they had to go through a process to get access to almost like an artist in residence, or, that kind of thing, where they're like, you're getting the right to showcase this work, provided it passes some sort of basic reviews on one of these public canvases that have been identified. And that would be a cool way for a business to lend its canvas, essentially, to the city without having to commit to paying for the artwork. I could see people being interested in that if the city wanted to come along on that, or, I don't know. So there's some complexity there. And then there's what other cities are doing, which is, I think, commissioning murals themselves as a city, where they're going out and saying, we, the city of Eugene, want to be whatever that statement was that they made, right? The best art in the city, in the country, or something, kind of grand. And they went out and solicited like high-end murals from well-known artists and came in and made a coherent, strategic, installation of multiple murals across the city in order to really say something about, that top-down kind of expenditure of funds and organization. Feels like it's more in the realm of like the public art plan thing. Like that would be the kind of thing that the public art manager would spearhead and do and raise money for. So I'm saying all that just to say, I think it would, if we can kind of tease apart what exactly we're talking about, which piece we're talking about, we might be able to define it a little bit better. I don't know.
Zach, a couple of things. In Vail, that little tiny community in Eastern Oregon that has 35 murals, they have the Vail Mural Society, and they actually go out and advocate, but they also hire the artists, and then they make arrangements long term for the murals to be taken care of over, when after a period of time when a mural disintegrates, they make or they're organized to actually refix the mural. But you know what, Susan, when you talk, here's my thought. When you're talking about community art, you're trying to create a conversation. And at one point we talked about going out and talking to the neighborhood associations as one way of doing it. I think Krista has presented an avenue by using social media to begin to create a community conversation about art. I don't know if other people noticed the article that was in the Salem Reporter this last week about all the visual art events that were taking place in Salem in the month of August. And so I think partly is how do you create that community conversation that creates a kind of community consensus about what you'd like to do. And it seems to me there are avenues to do that. It's just a matter of us, whether we want to take the time and the effort to go talk to neighborhood associations and with our list of questions, or whether we want to work through Press Play, which is another avenue that's out there, and they now have a really strong online medium to do it with, or have more conversation with the Salem Arts Association or Artists in Action, or, there's all these things that are going on. How do we intersect with all these other groups? What's the role of the Salem Public Art Commission in creating? So what I'm essentially asking is, what's to say our job in creating that community conversation, or should we just be looking out at what's already been creating and talking about it from that standpoint? Like, what would be your impression of where is the art community, the visual art community in Salem today? What's the direction that it's taking? Like the fact that there are more galleries such as Salem on the Edge than existed when I arrived in Salem 7 years ago, is a statement about what's going on.
Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, I agree with what Zach said. I agree with what you said. However, I think we're also already getting these mural applications and things happening where people want to do murals, businesses want to do murals, and they're, just for the example of the one that Eddie's been working so hard, I did ask him, what are the impediments to the current mural code that we have, application process, because he's dealt with other people who wanted to do murals. And they were like, no, I just can't. A business owner who just said, I don't have the time to go through this. I don't have this easement, the whole word easement and the 7-year. So I think, Keith, you hit on something that, maybe that's a way to go. If you feel that the city isn't ready for an alternative way of doing murals, that are closer to some of these other programs, which I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, because I think these other programs might be working and we could incorporate the kind of things that Zach was mentioning in them. And, but I think either look at the code, the mural program as it is, and work with that, or come up with something new. I think there's an objection even within certain members or at least one member of city council that I had talked to about always having these murals be part of the city collection, the public art collection, that they were looking for a way. And I think they were looking at it as a financial thing too, because the city then becomes financially responsible for these murals. They're not responsible for the street paintings. I mean, we did a cleaning of our street painting and we're going to do a refresher because it's our community. It's our, our neighborhood are doing it because of neighborhood pride. So
But Susan,
there are just other avenues, I think.
I don't think the city is responsible financially for the murals. I think that's part of the agreement is the city's, the property owners agreeing to take care of it for those 7 years, right? I don't think the city has any financial isn't on the hook. That's part of the point and maybe part of the issue. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, aside from the awkwardness of it as a mechanism, again, I'm not sure. My advice is, what are the problems? Like, people are going to have to go through some sort of process. So if 12 pages is too long, then maybe it needs to be 6 pages. If 7 years is too long, maybe it needs to be 5. But I think you're going to get traction if you can identify this is actually the problem. But without that, we're not just, I don't know that, like, per Keith's point, I don't think just totally revamping the mural code and starting from scratch. I mean, I'm not even sure it's necessary. It might just be like, this mural code is aimed at this audience, which is business owners putting things on their buildings. And we want to see more people doing that. And so we want to streamline the process. So we want to make the form shorter and the commitment shorter, because we think that would help more people say yes to it. Those are probably pretty easy asks, without necessarily changing the fact that it has to be part of the city art. Because again, I think that's just done so that some city body has the oversight of approving the applications before they go through, or as often happens, approving them after they've been painted. Okay, but I mean, I think that's it's a way of creating authority. And there could be a different way, but I don't know that from an applicant standpoint, they would probably still have to go in front of some group that would review the application and get it approved in that context.
I think some of these other programs do. I mean, I just don't think they become part. There's no mention of the art collection. I think there are processes,
but again,
and there are all sorts of also checking in with people who live in the area and getting a buy-in the way that we had to with the street painting. I mean, I don't think it's just like anybody can do it willy-nilly. I just don't think that has that, that the building owner has to get an easement and that it has to be 7 years. And, so, I'm not, against looking at the current program, but I still think it's worth looking in because, that could also work for, larger murals that you do want to have, hire somebody, some famous muralist to come in and do a mural downtown or whatever. But I think there's also room for another type of program. That's all I'm saying. That would have oversight. It's not like just like anybody can paint anything.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, what is that? And if you can define it, because being impatient with a process that we haven't actually said what it is, that's not going to go anywhere. So that's just going to make you more impatient. So my advice is, like, if So I think that there is probably room for additional programming to talk about how do residents put murals on private property? Is that something the city's comfortable with? Is that something neighborhood associations would be comfortable with? I don't know. I'd have to think about it, whether I'd even be, just thinking through it, like, I don't know if I want to see a painting on all my neighbors, sides of their houses walking around. Like, part of my brain says, yeah, part of my brain says, I don't know. I kind of,
Well, even the Portland original art mural permit is it's not the only residential, it's a minimum of 5 units. So it has to be a multifamily piece of property in order for a original mural to be put on there.
So I think, I just want to make sure it's actually a problem before we spend a bunch of energy swapping one oversight process for another oversight process. Like, I think the underlying desire is more murals. So how do we get more murals? So if we can streamline the existing process to make it easier, awesome. If we can open up murals to more people by opening up more places to put murals, that seems like a good option. If we can pay for some murals, I don't know, is that within SPAC's purview to commission original works of art and put them on the city? Like, maybe we should talk about that, that we have $40,000. So, there's sort of like, those are the 3 things that come to my mind, is like streamline the current process, create something that doesn't exist right now that would be a channel for artists to put murals on places where everyone's comfortable with them going, like the PGE wall next to the Gilbert House, or I'm sure many other places around the city that could be a cool exploration of like canvas identification and pre-approval with the city. And then we could have this like, stock of places that people could apply to go paint a mural, and maybe SPAC as a small grant. And that could be a really cool community engagement story that got a lot of murals up. And maybe, are there any requirements about maintenance at that point? To your point, maybe no. It's they put it up and it's part of the city collection, I guess, if that's the mechanism needed for us to have oversight over it, or some other group has oversight over it, I don't. But if I don't know, what do folks think? I guess that if we want to like move it forward, I mean, those are the things I can think of to try to get more murals up. That's why I guess I'm just trying to focus on the goal. The goal would be more murals.
Mhm.
I think the 2 things you presented, Zach, really are complementary to each other. One, just looking is, what is are the points in the process that are really sticking points now that we might need to change? And 2, having SPAC take a certain portion of our budget and say, okay, this year we want to actually find out if they're, do a, what is it, when you call out for people to say,
Offer.
here's $5,000 to put up your mural someplace. Somebody come with a proposal and we'll adjudicate the proposals, and there'll be this money to do. I mean, to do that on at least one time only basis, because then you're going to discover whether there's a big demand and the people out there who want to do it or not.
Well, Travel Salem, I'm sorry, but that's what Travel Salem did with the street art, street paintings. And they got 7 murals, and then they offered it, and then the city offered more money to more. So I think if you did something like that and even worked with Travel Salem and said, hey, we want more murals, I think, it would be, grabbed at.
So what if we try to write those things down, right? Like, we're proposing here. SPAC wants to do an RFP and fund or partially fund one mural, an exploratory experimental mural this year, with the idea of maybe replicating it in future years based on lessons learned. Then we want to explore this idea of, and where does that mural go? Maybe this is where it dovetails with the second idea of like, where can we put murals? Are there some public-private partnerships right now with businesses who would be amenable to having a mural but don't want to pay for it themselves, or don't want to go through that process? And then maybe on the form standpoint, the easement, that's all, I think that's all documentation the city provides back to the person anyway, that they have to sign. And so it may be that there's an intake form version of this that's like super short, like interested in a mural, it's a 1-pager. Like fill this out and submit it. And then the 12 pages are what you get back. Like here's like your mural's been, you've been accepted for review. Oh, that's good. That's encouraging. And then here's the fine print, right? To do this, you need, what's funny is that if SPAC goes out and commissions a mural, we might want an easement for 10 years, right? If we're going to spend $20,000 and ask an artist to do a match for $20,000 because these things are expensive. I sat on the Milwaukee board for a while, and like no one would even touch a mural project for less than 50 grand, right? So it's on that kind of scale. It's a real commitment. But if we're doing that, we might want the business owner to give us a really long easement to honor the commitment, the funding that would be required to put something up like that. So that easement thing, depending on how it's presented, it might not be that big of a deal if it's presented a little later and as this is just a requirement to putting up the mural that you're already interested in, that you've applied for. I don't know. I'd have to look more closely at how those forms are laid out, on the intake on the front end side, but I suspect we could probably streamline the forms without substantially changing the content. Just moving the gateway to the process up a little bit so that people could get in easier and get into dialogue with us more easily. And then, learn that their mural was approved and that was great. And then, okay, what's the next step? Well, the next step is you gotta, check this box, which right now I think we're at the last step. Like they do all of the things, and then it gets to us after they've pre-agreed to do an easement. And maybe that's the problem, is that it just is like, I don't even know if this is approved, and I'm signing stuff and this is confusing. And so maybe if we change that order, it could be easy for people to, because then they're incentivized. Then they found their artist, they want to do the work, and now you just have to sign the easement, which is kind of what's happening with the people who've already done it. They're coming around after the fact, and we're saying, well, sure, you just got to sign the thing.
Yeah.
And then they do. So then it's not a problem at all. I don't know.
And I guess I'd rather see 10 murals, in all different areas of Salem for, a few $1,000s each, just kind of really not just focus on these high cost ones, which we have downtown. I guess that's what's been done in the past. But just to make it easier for, for communities that don't have things like that.
Sure, totally. I was just saying the one as an example, just because it's something we could do. Like, because doing one feels like, yes, coming up with a program for 10 in the next year sounds like a big lift, But if we've got
there's seven street murals that are potentially happening. There's another one happening on Labor Day. That'll be the 4th, I think. So I see that parallel.
Probably the only difference is that I imagine that it is easier to paint a street mural than it is to do something on the street than it is to do something on a building. Just the logistics of it alone. Because if you're doing anything above 6 feet, you've got to put up all kinds of scaffolding, and I think it's just a more complicated process.
And ownership is easier. It's city property.
Yeah, that's
the thing. The article that Taming Murals of the City, I thought that was an excellent article. I learned a lot from it. It would be interesting to put Salem's mural program through their summary, through the policy review. Because the discussions we had earlier in the meeting, talked about what is the scope of the mural policy, levels of control, and methods of facilitating murals. So I take a look at it if you haven't had the opportunity to.
So Keith, do you want to, I saw you taking notes.
Yep.
Do we want to revisit this again? I guess, to Susan's point, from a framework standpoint, how do we streamline the current process? And is SPAC interested in going through an RFP process for some number of murals located somewhere? Which seems to implicate for me a couple different things: budget, commitment. What's the real cost of a mural? Can you really do a $2,000 mural? I don't know. Like, so, what kind of canvases are available and how do we figure that out? I don't know. Does the city, to your point about street murals, does the city have vertical wall space around that they would allow murals to be put on?
We have water towers. They're curvilinear. No, we would have to take a look at our assets. That's one of the first steps. For instance, the city of Kaiser, they're embarking on covering and doing wraps of their electric boxes, their traffic signal stations. So we had to make sure that even though we're operating it, it was their ownership, and they had so those are happening. I know downtown revitalization, there's some movement down there with a couple of the art pillars or art platforms. I don't have the details of what they're actually planning to do yet, but I'll follow up with staff.
Like, it might be, if there are some city walls that could be painted, or some easy to find public-private partnerships like the utilities, like PGE or something, that might generate interest. Like, if we can find the canvases and then get some art, get some murals done that are paid for by SPAC, but then expand that kind of thinking out to individuals who wanted to do murals, kind of simultaneously be increasing the number of available canvases and the number of making it available to community members who wanted to paint murals on those canvases.
Yeah.
We didn't have to, and it became really a public mural on public facility kind of program.
Yeah.
Streets being another public facility, right? And that the murals on private property program kind of is left as it is, with some streamlining to the form. I mean, that might just be a way of, like, because if SPAC kind of seeded the pump, as it were, and got a couple of them up, people might be like, well, I want to do that, or I want those, and then
absolutely,
SPAC wouldn't have to pay for all of them. We could generate community interest, and
Let's
do some seed murals.
Yeah.
I think too, if we're part of this conversation and we're part of this, of creating these works, I think people then would also feel more comfortable about potentially submitting proposals. Because I think right now, as we've spoken, it can be a little daunting filling out a 12-page form and talking about easements and things like that. But if they know that we're also putting our resources and our effort into this, that we are really committed to this program and to this succeeding. So it might also help kickstart that a little bit as well.
Like, what if people could, what if we had a pre-screen? I guess I'm just like, submit your design. Like, you want to do this mural and you don't even know where it would go yet. Like, we could act as a matching, where some people are going to know, I have a building, I want to put a mural on it. Easy. That's the way it works now. What we can say about that is it does not leading to like super fast mural painting around the city. It's a more slow, occasional sort of thing. But if you could create the canvases and you could create the awareness that it's an option and that people could very easily submit a design, we could go, yep. And then that scale of mural that you want to matches with these 6 locations, and it's basically pre-approved, So now it's just a matter of, we can provide 10% grant funding from SPAC and, talk to your neighborhood association and whoever, else, whatever, depending on where the thing is, right?
Yeah.
To Chris's point, I think, so I'm sorry, Keith, that I think that a lot of this is also managing perception of the commission. I think a lot of these murals that are being done without being reviewed, whether the owners of the businesses know or don't know about the process, they may know about the process, but be wary that the commission's not going to let them. I mean, I think there is a perception that the commission is kind of hard ass and that we don't accept things, which is not true. So I think a lot of it is managing perception, and to, you know, what Krista said is and to your idea, Zach, that if we offer, you know, yeah, what do you want to do? Let us help you do it, that it will change, you know, maybe start to shift the perception.
I mean, we could even, you know, if you had a bank of submitted designs, you could point that at the business community and say, here's a bunch of pre-approved designs that people want to do, and you've got space, you know, we want to put you together.
Yeah, or as Eddie said, you know, there's a roster of artists out there.
Exactly. I think the artist could find this quite compelling. It's a big stage. I get my work up. So, but I guess the point there is that we're separating the two sides without, we're not forcing one person to do all of it. Like I have to have the space and find the artist and come up with the design thing. And, you know, if someone could still do that, but by modularizing that, you could make it easier for people to say, I don't have any bandwidth to organize this, but if all I had to do was go on a website and say, I like that one, and it was on, and I agreed to let it be on my building, you know, that would be pretty easy for somebody, rather than like, I have to find an artist and I have to do an RFP and I have to figure it out, and then it gets shut down by the city. And like, but you just would remove all of that, and they're just, ooh, I want Walk in the Park by Eduardo, you know, click. Like, great. Here's how that would work. It would cost this much money, and you know, you'd have to agree to this stuff. But
Right.
Well, and I wonder if, you know, these two kind of concepts go together. You know, if we put out a proposal and we say, all right, we are, you know, we will find one space in the city that we can create a mural, and we put out a call and we essentially say, like, if you aren't chosen for this, we're keeping you on file, we're keeping your design. You know, we are going to keep this available, because we also might, once we do this, have businesses that approach and say, yeah, you know what, if you guys are doing this, yeah, we are interested. And then right there, you know, we might have just a little bank to go from, just from that initial call.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
we're getting there.
And I had a month in my social media plan all about murals.
That's
Good.
Great.
Let's work to that. When is it? Which month?
Yeah.
I just have them as 12, you know, the first two are pretty time sensitive, but because it's just introducing the collection and introducing us. But after that, I mean, we can kind of tailor it how we want it to. So.
And after the last meeting, I know some of you are interested in seeing the application itself, the mural application, to go through and kind of make suggestions or recommendations to what you feel would be good changes on behalf of the applicant. So I think if you can do that and send me some of your suggestions by next meeting, I'll compile those, and then we'll have something to offer to legal and the permitting desk and changes to streamline our process.
Definitely.
I think
Is
that's a
there
good
any
first step.
way to solicit feedback from the individuals or groups that have already gone through the process? Because they would know better than we would. You know, I know that Eddie, you know, has gone through it with various businesses, and he could probably easily point it out. But
Mhm.
can we get feedback from any of the
I can ask, but if you look at the application itself, and it's all online, their applicant, it really depends on how passionate the applicant is and want to communicate their information, you know. The mural regarding the cars, they provide lots of background information, you know, of the artists, about the whole mission. Whereas Dave's Hot Chicken was really short one-liners, you know. So it really depends on what drives them, I think, in terms of the application. But they all submitted and they all passed. So I think they'll say it was a good process.
Yeah, I just wondered what they would say, you know, what, I mean, we wouldn't have to listen to everything that they said, but
Yeah.
you say to them, hey, Dave's Hot Chicken, we're looking at this application. Is there anything that you would suggest that you would have preferred it would be different? How would have been easier for you? What,
Mhm.
you know, I don't know. Just see.
Maybe too, to add to this conversation, Krista, to your mural month, and
Mhm.
Susan, to your point about the commission, I have a sneaking suspicion that nobody knows the commission exists. So I don't think anyone has any impression of us at all. I think people think it's the city that's a hard ass about murals. So I think that maybe
For me.
yeah, or Keith, I think that so maybe there's a campaign to be done around this that's like Salem wants murals.
Mhm.
Your mural here, and a big picture of a blank wall, right? We're rolling out this program to encourage murals because we want them.
Mhm.
Here's this easy way. Go in here, submit your design. We're finding spots. Like we want to do this. Partial grant funding available. Like that. Then the fact that the commission, like who we are, doesn't matter. Like we're just people in the background, right? But the city wants this to happen.
Mhm.
And if we can tell that story and get that kind of campaign approved, where the city's like, yes, we don't mind saying that the city wants this to happen, then we could affect perception by just literally reaching out the hand, you know, the Salem saying, you know, come join us and put murals on the 50 places we've identified around the city where they could go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
then you might get school kids involved. I mean, I don't know. It could really crack open all kinds of stuff that we aren't thinking about right now. You know,
Mhm.
like I don't know,
Absolutely.
all these opportunities to paint stuff, and the city wants us to paint stuff, and that would really be a different posture than I think we are worried exists now, which is it's hard and it's a culture of no, and you know, we'd be like, nope, it's super permissive. It's a culture of yes, and these are all public.
Right.
These are public walls, and you know, let's
Yeah.
paint our public walls. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Street walls, easy, bam. You know, and we just about the like, you know, and then the private pathway is still maybe a little more complex, but
Yeah. I'm
Well, Keith, that
hoping.
letter that you got, can you kind of segue into that?
Oh.
Because that's a whole thing about what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, SPAC paints out things, and you know,
Yes.
SPAC doesn't allow this, and SPAC doesn't allow that, and
Yeah.
zoning and murals, and you know.
Well, so apparently, there was a complaint, that to the zoning people or the sign people that this is a mural. And is there a permit for it? They looked in and the painting it says the Shack Bar and Grill. And probably an eighth of the painting, there is a picture of a shack. And so when sign codes went up or permitting said you have to reduce the signage by this much, I think initially it was only like 60 square feet, but then I realized I got an email later that it was actually supposed to only be 60 square feet. The home or the business owner decided to just paint over it. He wasn't happy about it. He was acquiescing to the city's demands or the city's request to, follow the rules. And he chose not to go through the process, but he was saying it was me that chose not to do art. And I had to be careful with my words, not saying art, that it felt more like a sign than it did a public mural. And those words was translated into my sign isn't art, or who are you to determine my sign is not art. And so that was a sticky wicket for a little bit. But that just shows expresses a tension between public interests, or private interest and, the public rules. But is that kind of what you wanted me to kind of
Yeah,
summarize,
I mean,
Susan?
I didn't read it all in detail, but it sounded like it was kind of a nasty, not nasty, I'm not going to say that, but it was contentious. And it did have to do with what we're sort of talking about, that there are rules that
Mhm.
maybe they make sense, maybe they don't make sense.
Yeah.
And
And I push back a little
where
bit.
do we fall on those things? And
Mhm.
do we have a role in that? What, you know?
But
Why?
I think there is a really a good opportunity here, because there is a distinction between paintings on businesses, because there is a sort of advertisement to it. And is that, do we want to be part of it as a city advertising a business? And so maybe there could be some boundaries we could put around the content, like words, should words not be included in it? I'm not sure. And so my suggestion to city staff is, if there are issues like this where it's an obvious sign and wouldn't fall under mural policy, could there be variances in the sign code, not so much, in the city mural code? So that's kind of where I'm trying to keep it.
It's,
so to speak.
I'm looking at it right now on Google Earth, and it's like a nice sign. I mean, it's
Sign.
I mean, it is, and it's, and then you can go down a little bit further, and you can see it's painted over.
That's a shame.
Yeah, on Google
That's
Earth.
a real shame that there
Yeah.
isn't room for something like that in Salem.
Yeah, it's just now it's just a black wall, and that's not great.
But I'm with you, Keith, like sign code variance without having SPAC have to go contort itself to say that an obvious business sign is a mural. Like it's not, but does that mean it shouldn't be allowed?
Yeah, because signs could be artistic. Signs should be artistic,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be a public mural. Is,
No.
is what I'm saying.
Right.
So if we can put bumpers on it,
But this is why separating the private business thing from the public mural program that we're kind of talking about and flushing out here would be even better, right? Because like if the canvas isn't on a business, it's not like no one's incentivized to go right. I mean, I'm sure someone still probably is incentivized to go put an advertisement on something with a big arrow pointing to their business down the block or something, right? But like, there's less of an obvious connection there.
Well, there's the maraschino cherry mural. I mean, we wouldn't have that mural if it weren't for the business who wanted to do it
Mhm.
and kind of.
Yeah, we discussed it as SPAC.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's going on with that, Keith, in terms
Oh,
of
yes.
painting on the silos?
Yeah, so I emailed the applicant. She's no longer going to be working with them, but she's going to pass the message along that they're welcome to apply for another mural application. And so at that point in time, if their original paintings or renderings are going to be in the application, then SPAC can say, hey, 99% of this sign or this painting is a sign with your logo on it, most likely wouldn't pass. But if the second one is more, in line with the layout of the original mural, then you can say, yeah, we'll accept that one. And so if you want to test it.
Were they planning to submit to finish that mural?
They wanted to originally. I haven't heard back when I provided them the update.
All right, well, have we talked about murals sufficiently for this round?
I think so.
Okay. I don't know that we have any action items at this point. We have item 7 was discussions about public art. I think maybe that's what we just did, but was there something else okay. Does anyone have any other issues or things they want to talk about today? Just kind of looking at being cognizant of everyone's time. No.
Oh,
Question.
quick. Sorry, where's the mural application? I was looking on the city website.
Oh, are you on the Public Art Commission website?
Oh no. Okay.
You don't have it bookmarked?
I
It's like number 1.
should.
Can you send us that link? I think, did
Yeah.
you send us that link already, Keith?
Yeah.
And
I'll put
Maybe
it in the, I'll
send
put it in
it
the
again
chat.
with a little note, please review for next meeting.
Yes. So I sent you the application as well, via email last time, but on this website has all our information, the street painting program, the rules and bylaws, the public mirror program, all the different public notices, public hearings, staff reports and decisions, as well as our meeting agendas and minutes.
Can I just, point of clarification, is the street art program under the auspices of the Public Art Commission?
The street art program is part of the chapter 15, which also identifies a public art commission. Let me show you what it looks like.
Because we
Online.
don't really have anything to do with, even approving anything for the,
What do you mean? So chapter 15 is public art. It outlines the purpose of it, the definitions. This is where we change the definition of building to include curvilinear surfaces, curvilinear walls. Section 15.02 outlines what the Salem Public Art Commission is and their responsibilities. This is talking about the budget or the art fund and how it's managed. What the public art funds are restricted to, how artwork is titled and cited. And this is where the mural program intent and purpose is separated. Here is the outline procedures, all outlined in code. And then here is the street painting program, which is separate from the mural program. So they pulled this out, and the street painting program is administered through, let's see. I don't have it pull up right on my screen. But that's what it that's how it's nested within the public art chapter. It's separate. Street painting is separate from public murals.
I'm reading through the application for the public mural checklist, and it's not public friendly.
No, not
Yeah.
even filling it out.
No, it's just like the second thing is a copy of the recorded deed, land sales contract of the total contiguous ownership of the applicant must accompany an application.
Yes.
The deed, land sales contract of the total contiguous ownership of the applicant. I assume they mean the ownership of the land, but if the land use request is only for a portion of the total ownership, include a second recorded deal. I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
like, that's the thing you see. And then you're submit your assessor's map, attach an official copy of the county tax assessor's map, which of course you get, but like, then, so I'm just saying, like, it's not like, welcome to the city's mural program. Like,
Yeah,
Salem wants murals. Like, let's get
Yeah.
going. Phil, give us some basic information and we'll get back to you and work with you to get this developed. It's pretty like, you must do this prior to this, and we need, that this would give, I can see why this was giving people pause. So,
Yep.
12 sets of review drawings, no larger than 11 by 17. Like, it's pretty like, whew, it's pretty real. So
Mhm.
I just wonder if this could be moved down in the process and the friendly messaging could be moved up in the process, and it could be
Yeah.
more of an engagement and less of a like, because yeah, it's pretty intense.
Can we like after we review it and say, this is not, too much, this is too much to ask, if we feel that way, that, who do we sit down with? Is it the lawyers, or does city staff do that based on our recommendation and say, hey, we want this to be user friendly, and
I
Yeah.
am going to be
what's the
involving.
procedure?
I'm going to be involving legal at all points in this process because it's so sensitive and new, and I don't know the answer to that in terms of how much oversight legal will need in the changing of the application. So I'll let you know at the next meeting.
I really just quickly looking at it. I know I'm the one like, but it needs a more marketing based lead in with a more accessible questionnaire. The questionnaire part's 2 pages long, so we could talk about that. Then it wants the applicant to pre-defend the criteria that SPAC uses to weigh the application. I'm not sure that's even required. Like strength of artist concept, demonstrate craftsmanship, appropriateness of the design and scale of the mural to the wall. So they have to fill all this out. They have to make the argument. And then at the bottom, they have to certify that their responses are true and correct representations and may be used as findings and evidence. The language is scary, right? It's going to be scary to someone who's not, I mean, I'm just reiterating that could probably be struck entirely, that whole section, because that's really our criteria review, which we could then ask them, and we could, submit an RFI back to them and say, hey, tell us about the artist, or, I mean, this could all just be phrased in a way that we can get the answers we needed without them putting them through this, like, you're on the stand and, if you lie here, we're going to, it's like, what? And then the final piece of this is the easement, which again, I feel like could come to them after stage 3 of this process, where we were like, it's approved, it's great. And the final step, which we communicated to you earlier, is that you need to sign this easement. Here it is. We filled it out. You just need to sign it. It's done. So we could really make this a lot friendlier.
I think the reason up front why they want to know the easement information is to ensure that the applicant actually has authority to put a painting on the wall.
So I think that would be a great upfront question.
Yeah.
They're certifying they have the authority to put the painting on the wall.
There you go.
Like, yeah. Great. Okay. Yep. And I signed that. And then, I get the, like, maybe we don't want to waste SPAC's time or something, but again, we're not being inundated with these things. I think maybe the pendulum has swung too far. The gatekeeping is intense. And if we could maybe lessen the gatekeeping, which doesn't mean necessarily changing the underlying guts of it. Like, yeah, they still have to sign an easement and we still have to approve it. But read through it yourselves and see what you think. But it seems intense to me, because I know people are intimidated by kind of legalese, which is sort of what this is. So
I just sent you a link to the original art mural permits through Portland. And they go through their quote unquote 5 simple steps to get an original art mural permit. And if you look at step number 2, they're required to contact the recognized neighborhood association, neighborhood coalition in which the mural site is located and schedule a neighborhood meeting. We don't have that requirement for the city of Salem. I just CC the neighborhood association people, and they determine whether or not, some of the applicants go to the neighborhood association meetings to advocate for their painting. Others don't. So, that's one more step. I'm just showing this as an example of, to compare what our process currently is to what another one currently has in Portland.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their intake is 2 pages. Their form, and it's the name, the type of mural, the type of building, the dimensions. It's going to be some certifications that they have the right to place the mural on the site, which we just talked about. Then it meets a couple of things like 4 certifications, and then they sign it. That's page 1. And then page 2, they want 1 plan drawing, they want 1 elevation drawing. So, and some fees. So it's it's friendlier and shorter. But
Yeah, even this page is, looks kind of friendly. What do I do? What is a visual art mural? 5 steps, 5 simple steps, something like this. And also there's no mention of it having to be accepted into a public art collection here either. I don't think they're doing that with this program.
Not the neighborhood one.
But
Yeah.
you know,
But it might all change when Rock is not there anymore, or
It might,
but that's not something that impacts the applicant. You know, that's just a behind the scenes thing for us. The public collection thing, like that, we don't need to tell that story to the applicant. In fact, I don't think we do.
Hmm.
yeah,
Our long form, because it doesn't matter. Like that's not a barrier for them.
yeah.
It's just something we find annoying. But
Or we could make it a plus, saying, hey,
yeah,
it's gonna be part of our collection.
nah,
So when we do brochures, when we have it on the website, when we do social media, we're gonna publicize that this wonderful mural is out there.
and when
It
you're
belongs to everybody in the city.
part of the reward of getting accepted, you're now part of the Salem Public Art Collection.
Yeah,
But then,
that would be a switch.
And right now too, the way that the website is set up, you can do kind of the virtual tour. You can go look at all the forms and then you can go look at a couple of the murals. So it doesn't even there's not like another medium section for anything. It prioritizes murals. So yes, they would have a lot of access in that
Yeah.
sense.
I think it would be great to take a, closer look at this Portland program and see if, what we can learn.
yeah, thanks for saying that, Keith.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I will submit feedback on the form, and then we can try to collate it and see if there's an opportunity to create a marketing first version of this that then eases the form steps, so that like Portland's doing, first fill out this fairly easy 2-page form. We'll get into the other stuff as we get into it, but so it's a low barrier to entry.
So is that our homework for next time, or
Yeah,
Zach, is that your homework for next time?
that's all of our homework for next time.
Mhm.
Okay,
Please look at that form and think about it. As you'll see, it's segregated into 3 different pieces: the 2-page intake form, the questionnaires for the ORS or the code criteria, and then the easement. So the easement's very clearly something that can come second. The criteria, we could just ask them some questions that would help us do the evaluation. So I'm not sure we need that from them. And then making that first 2 pages easier and a little more in line with maybe what City of Portland's doing. It's a fillable form. It's shorter. It's more basic information they're going to have. I didn't see a tax assessor's map requirement, City of Portland. So I guess, some of that implies that there's going to be a little more work that's going to have to be done once something comes in. Like we might want to pull the tax assessor's map based on the address provided.
We do it. I do it anyway.
We do it anyway, right? So like, I don't know, just making it like the least amount of information they can provide us to make sure they're a real thing, making a real application, might help. Anyway.
I just want to make sure we are able to reference their application to be able to answer those requirements of the code, explicitly. Because that's one way to also get the information you want. Because how do I, compare it to what code says and what they say if I don't ask them directly? You know what I mean? There's
I don't know. Strength for the artist concept, isn't that kind of what SPAC's doing, is judging?
Yeah.
So that's really, we're deciding, is this a strong concept? Because they can say whatever they want, but we're looking and saying, no, it's not, demonstrated craftsmanship of artists. So I think we could ask for an artist resume.
Yep.
Which is really essentially what we do. Where else has this artist had work? Have they a professional practicing artist? So we could rephrase what we're asking them to.
Those would help. Yeah, absolutely.
Content that we're trying to get, appropriateness of the design and scale of the mural to the wall in which they'll be painted attached. Appropriateness. Is it, again, I'm not sure if I were the applicant. It's a big wall and it's a big mural. What are you asking me to say there? It's too big. Are we judging that? Are they, I don't, so these are sort of judgment calls that I think the committee's making about the application. So they've submitted it. Here's the picture, here's the drawing, here's the whatever. And then we're deciding, no, that's inappropriate. Or not strong enough of a concept, or I don't know. So I'm just not clear. These would be questions I guess I would ask. Like, what kind of information we're really trying to get from the applicant? And let's see if we can come up with friendlier questions that'll get us there. I also don't know, I don't know.
It might be asking, more work from staff, but I wonder if there should be an initial simple application. Like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? What, and then if you look at it and you get most of the information and images, and then we can look at it and say, hey, let's move forward on this or not move forward on it. And then you get all the other papers, and I don't know, but that's kind of a two-step process that might be too cumbersome too. I don't know.
All right.
Well,
Well,
if anyone,
Anyway.
if anyone contacts me regarding the mirror program, about the mirror program, I will walk them through the application, all that stuff. So, if that's something that you meant, I already do that if they're interested.
Mhm.
I think we're just sort of, to the extent that we're hearing feedback that the form is intimidating, I guess I would agree. The form is intimidating. So, so if we could
Okay.
take a few steps to piece it out for them, or, revamp it a little bit, but preserve the basic process and content, but just sort of make it a little easier.
Okay.
That might be a goal. All right. Murals.
Okay.
All right, we done?
Fun.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
See
you.
you all next month.
Next month.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Carol. Meeting adjourned at 4:19.